Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The blade felt cold against his throat, a biting chill that promised the sweet release of death, but the eyes staring down at him burned with an inferno that threatened to consume his very soul. 3 years ago, you broke my legs and told me to crawl, the man above him whispered, his voice a low rumble of thunder wrapped in velvet. He was no longer the broken boy in rags. He was an emperor, draped in black and gold robes that shimmered like dragon scales in the candlelight. Now, General Xie, who is the one on his knees? The cold steel pressed harder, drawing a single bead of blood that trickled down the general's pale neck, stark against the dark interrogation collar locked around it. This was the moment Xie Lan had dreaded since the second he opened his eyes in this accursed world. This was the ending written in ink, the destiny of the cannon fodder villain. But looking up into the abyss of Emperor Li Feng's gaze, Xie Lan didn't feel fear. He felt a twisted, suffocating sense of victory. Go ahead, Xie Lan thought, his lips curving into a defiant, bloody smile. Kill me. It's better than admitting I loved you first. To understand how the great general of the North ended up chained at the feet of the man he once enslaved, one must rewind the clock to a winter night that smelled of copper and charcoal. When consciousness first slammed into him, it wasn't a gentle waking. It was a violent lurch, accompanied by the distinct, sickening sound of leather striking flesh. Xie Lan gasped, his lungs burning with icy air. He looked down at his right hand. He was gripping a heavy, braided whip, the end of which was stained a dark, wet crimson. Before him, chained to a wooden post in the center of a snowy courtyard, was a young man. The youth was barely 20, his white inner robes shredded to ribbons, revealing a back crisscrossed with angry welts. His hair, dark as a raven's wing, hung over his face, hiding his expression. But the tension in his shoulders, the way he refused to sag, despite the chains stretching his arms overhead, spoke of a spirit that could not be broken by mere lashes. Memories that did not belong to him flooded Xie Lan's mind like a bursting dam. He was Xie Lan, the Jade Rakshasa, the cruelest general of the great Yin dynasty. And the boy bleeding in the snow was Li Feng, the fallen crown prince of the conquered kingdom of Shu. I'm in the book, Xie Lan realized, a cold sweat breaking out beneath the heavy fur of his cloak. I am the mid-boss. The cannon fodder. The jealous bully who tortures the protagonist because the emperor favored Li Feng's beauty. In the original novel, The Path of the Azura, Xie Lan would whip Li Feng 300 times this night. Li Feng would survive, harbor a hatred that could swallow the heavens, and 3 years later, after escaping and raising an army, he would return. He would skin Xie Lan alive and hang his bones from the city gates. Xie Lan's grip on the whip faltered. He was standing on the precipice of his own gruesome execution. Continue, the youth on the post rasped. The voice was weak, but laced with a venom so potent it made Xie Lan's spine tingle. Li Feng lifted his head. His eyes were not human. They were the golden, predatory eyes of a wolf cornered but ready to rip out a throat. Or has the great General Xie lost his taste for blood so soon? The servants and guards surrounding the courtyard watched in silence, their breaths misting in the freezing air. They expected violence. They expected the general to fly into a rage at the prisoner's insolence. Xie Lan's mind raced. If he stopped now and apologized, he would be out of character. The system of fate might strike him down, or worse, the guards would suspect possession. But if he continued, he was cementing his death warrant. He needed a pivot. A reason to stop that aligned with the cruelty of the original villain but spared the protagonist. Xie Lan sneered, masking his panic with a mask of icy arrogance. He tossed the whip to the ground with a disdainful thud. Boring, Xie Lan declared, his voice carrying effortlessly over the wind. He stepped closer to Li Feng, ignoring the murderous glare directed at him. He reached out, grabbing Li Feng's chin with long, elegant fingers, forcing the boy to look him in the eye. Up close, Li Feng was breathtaking, a tragic beauty carved from jade and stained with blood. Your screams have lost their melody, princely, Xie Lan lied smoothly. You are half dead. If I break a toy completely, I cannot play with it tomorrow. And I intend to play with you for a very long time. He released Li Feng's chin roughly, wiping his hand on a silk handkerchief as if he had touched filth. He turned to the stunned guards. Cut him down. Bring him to the warm pavilion. Fetch the imperial physician. The captain of the guards blinked. General? The physician? For a slave? Did I stutter? Xielan's eyes narrowed. If he dies of infection before I am finished with him, I will take the cost of his life out of your flesh. The threat worked. The guards scrambled to unlock the chains. Li Feng collapsed, his legs giving out, but before he hit the snow, Xielan's body moved on instinct. He caught the fallen prince. For a heartbeat, time froze. Li Feng was heavy, burning with fever, smelling of iron and sweat. He looked up at Xielan, confusion warring with hatred in his golden eyes. What game is this? Li Feng hissed, too weak to push him away. The game of survival, Xielan whispered, low enough that only they could hear. Try not to lose too quickly. The months that followed were a delicate dance on the edge of a knife. Xielan had to maintain his reputation as the Jade Rakshasa, while subtly ensuring Li Feng's survival. He moved Li Feng from the dungeons to the servants' quarters attached to his own manor, claiming he needed his personal servant close by to humiliate him at all hours. The humiliation, however, was strangely domestic. This tea is too hot, Xielan would scold, knocking the cup from the table. Make it again. And since you are so incompetent, you will stay here and study these military treatises until you learn discipline. He would punish Li Feng by forcing him to grind ink for hours, while Xielan accidentally left secret maps of the border defenses open on the desk. He would starve Li Feng by banning him from the servants' mess hall, only to have plates of roast duck and lotus soup left in Li Feng's room, supposedly rejected leftovers from the general's table that were untouched. It was a perilous performance, and Li Feng was no fool. One rainy afternoon, as Li Feng was polishing Xielan's armor in the stillness of the study, the silence broke. Why are you feeding me information on the southern garrisons? Li Feng asked. He didn't look up, his cloth moving rhythmically over the silver breastplate. Xielan, who was reading a scroll by the window, froze. I have no idea what you mean. You are merely cleaning my mess. The maps you left out last week, Li Feng said, his voice steady. They showed the supply routes through the Black Valley. The leftovers you send contain herbs meant to strengthen internal cultivation. And, he paused, finally looking up. His eyes had regained their light. His body had filled out, the whip scars fading into pale lines under the high-quality salve Xielan had provided. You haven't raised a hand against me in 4 months. Xielan closed his scroll. Do not mistake my boredom for kindness, Li Feng. A dog must be healthy to hunt. Li Feng stood up. He moved with a predator's grace now, the warrior within him awakening under Xielan's unintended tutelage. He crossed the room, stopping inches from Xielan's desk. You are plotting something against the emperor, Li Feng deduced, his gaze piercing. You want to use me as a weapon. The emperor is my master, Xielan lied, his heart hammering. No, I just want you to live so you don't kill me. And you are my slave. Am I? Li Feng leaned down, placing his hands on the armrests of Xielan's chair, trapping the general. The scent of sandalwood and rain enveloped them. The power dynamic shifted palpably. The slave loomed over the master. Or are you waiting for me to bite the hand that feeds me? Xielan looked up, meeting those golden eyes. He saw suspicion, yes, but also a burning curiosity. And beneath that, something darker, an obsession taking root. If you bite, Xielan murmured, his voice betraying a tremor he couldn't suppress, make sure you aim for the throat. I don't appreciate sloppy work. Li Feng's gaze dropped to Xielan's lips. The air in the room grew thick, charged with unspoken desire and ancient enmity. I never miss, Li Feng whispered. He pulled back before the moment could shatter, returning to the armor. But the line had been crossed. The hatred was changing shape, twisting into a slow-burn fascination that was far more dangerous than simple loathing. The turning point came during the Festival of Lanterns. The emperor, a sadistic man who viewed his subjects as cattle, demanded a hunt. The prey was to be the prisoners of war. Li Feng was dragged from Xielan's manor, thrown into the forest in rags, armed only with a dull knife. Xielan was forced to ride at the emperor's side, a bow in his hand. Shoot him, general. The emperor commanded, pointing a jeweled finger at the distant figure of Li Feng running through the snow-laden trees. Prove your loyalty. Put an arrow through his heart. Xiaolon knocked an arrow. His hands were steady, trained by years of muscle memory, but his mind was screaming. If he missed on purpose, the emperor would execute them both. If he hit, he saw Li Feng pause in a clearing, looking back. Their eyes met across the distance. There was no fear in Li Feng's face, only a grim acceptance. Do it, the look seemed to say. Xiaolon drew the string to his cheek. He inhaled sharply. Swoosh. The arrow flew. It grazed Li Feng's shoulder, tearing fabric and skin, and slammed into the throat of the assassin hiding in the brush directly behind the prince. The assassin dropped, a black-clad corpse staining the snow. The emperor gasped. Assassin! Protect the emperor! Chaos erupted. Guards swarmed. In the confusion, Xiaolon kicked his horse into a gallop, not toward the emperor, but toward Li Feng. He reached the clearing as Li Feng was pulling the dull knife from his belt. Xiaolon didn't speak. He extended his hand. It was a moment of insanity. A general reaching out to a fugitive slave. Li Feng looked at the hand, then at the arrow that had saved his life, and finally at Xiaolon's face. The mask of the Jade Rakshasa was gone, replaced by frantic desperation. Li Feng took his hand. Xiaolon hoisted him onto the horse, pulling him against his chest. Hold on, he commanded, wheeling the steed around. You missed, Li Feng shouted over the wind as they tore through the forest. I never miss, Xiaolon yelled back. They rode until the horses blew foam, deep into the northern mountains where the emperor's reach faltered. At the edge of the frozen pass, the border to the barbarian lands where Li Feng could rebuild his army, Xiaolon stopped. He dismounted and shoved a heavy bag of gold and a seal into Li Feng's hands. Go, Xiaolon said, his breath coming in ragged clouds. The pass is unguarded tonight. My lieutenants are drunk. Cross the border. Do not look back. Li Feng stood in the snow, clutching the bag. Why? Because you are too noisy, Xiaolon said, turning away to hide the stinging in his eyes. And I am tired of your tea. He expected Li Feng to run. He expected the protagonist to embrace his freedom. Instead, a hand grabbed his shoulder, spinning him around. Li Feng kissed him. It wasn't a sweet kiss. It was a collision of teeth and desperation, a branding. It tasted of blood and winter. Xiaolon froze, his hands hovering, unsure whether to push or pull. Then, with a groan of defeat, he grabbed Li Feng's lapels and kissed him back, pouring all the fear and secret longing of the past year into the contact. When they broke apart, Li Feng's eyes were blazing. You are not Xiaolon, Li Feng said, his voice shaking. The Xiaolon I knew was a monster. You are a liar. Leave, Li Feng, Xiaolon choked out. Before I change my mind and chain you again. Li Feng backed away, his gaze never leaving Xiaolon's face. I will come back, he vowed, the promise ringing like a curse and a prayer. I will take back my kingdom. And when I do, I am coming for you. You belong to me, General. Do not let anyone else kill you before I return. He turned and vanished into the storm. Xiaolon stood alone in the snow, touching his bruised lips. You won't find me, he whispered. By the time you return, I will be long gone. But the plot of a novel is a gravitational force. You cannot escape the orbit of the main character. 3 years passed. The world turned upside down. The Wolf King of the North rose. Li Feng united the barbarian tribes, reclaimed the kingdom of Shu, and marched on the Yin Empire. The war was brutal and swift. The Yin Emperor, bloated with corruption, fell within months. Xiaolon did not run. He couldn't. His family, the innocent members of the Xie clan, were held hostage in the capital. He stayed to command the defense, fighting a war he knew he would lose, just to buy time for civilians to evacuate. When the capital fell, General Xiaolon was found sitting in the throne room, his sword broken at his feet, drinking a cup of wine as the palace burned around him. He was not executed. He was taken, which brought him to this moment. The dark room, the kneeling, the blade at his throat. You didn't run, Emperor Li Feng said, the interrogation coming to an end. He withdrew the blade, tossing it aside with a clatter. I had nowhere to go, Xiaolon replied, his voice hoarse. My role in this story is over, Your Majesty. Grant me a clean death. Li Feng laughed, a low, dark sound. He grabbed Xiaolan by the collar of his prisoner's garb and hauled him to his feet. The chains rattled musically. Death! Li Feng sneered, pulling Xiaolan close. The boy he had saved was gone. A man of terrifying power stood in his place. You think you can escape me that easily? You saved my life. You fed me. You taught me war. And then you abandoned me. I set you free. Xiaolan argued. You discarded me. Li Feng roared, slamming Xiaolan against the nearest pillar. The impact knocked the breath from him. Li Feng pinned him there, his body pressing hard against Xiaolan's. For 3 years, I thought of nothing but this. Not the throne. Not the revenge. Just you. Your lies. Your cold hands. Your mouth. Li Feng's hand moved to Xiaolan's neck, not to strangle, but to hold. His thumb traced the pulse point that hammered frantically. The history books will say General Xie died in the fire, Li Feng murmured, his anger cooling into something possessive and heavy. But in this palace, you will live. You wanted a servant? Now you will serve. Xiaolan stared at him. As a slave? As my empress, Li Feng corrected, his eyes darkening with intent. Xiaolan's jaw dropped. That is against all protocol. I am a man. I am a war criminal. I am the emperor, Li Feng said, leaning in until their lips brushed. I rewrite the laws. And I rewrite the ending of this story. He unlocked the collar around Xiaolan's neck, letting it fall to the floor. In the past, you held the whip, Li Feng whispered against his mouth. Now I hold the leash. But unlike you, Xiaolan, I will never let go. Xiaolan looked at the man who had conquered the world just to capture him. The cannon fodder destiny had been shattered, replaced by a gilded cage built of obsession and twisted love. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since transmigrating, he stopped fighting the current. Then rule me, your majesty, Xiaolan breathed. Li Feng didn't need to be told twice. He sealed their pact with a kiss that tasted of victory, finally taming the only enemy who had ever mattered. And that is how the wolf devoured the viper, not by killing him, but by swallowing him whole. If you enjoyed seeing the tables turn and the hunter become the prey, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, if you were Xiaolan, would you have run away or stayed to face the monster you created? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Emperor Li Feng, tall and muscular, wearing black and gold imperial dragon robes, long black hair, intense golden eyes, possessive expression, standing dominantly. Man 2. General Xiaolan, beautiful and pale, wearing white prisoner inner robes, slightly disheveled, long dark hair, kneeling or pinned against a red pillar, looking up with defiance and desire. Background is a dimly lit imperial bedchamber, red silk curtains, fallen chains on the floor, candlelight, atmospheric shadows, cinematic composition, intense eye contact, sexual tension.